And we are finally back. I want to start by giving a shout out to my co-host and one of my best friends, Brandon, here for getting married over the weekend. But he's back. We're here to record. We're going to start the episode by discussing the situation ongoing at Oklahoma State with Mike Gundy and Chuba Hubbard. And then we continue to another just as not great situation brewing in Mississippi and Starkville with Kylin Hill. But this one involves the NCAA. And then we continue our segment where we re-rank past recruiting classes, and today we analyzed the loaded 2014 recruiting class, and we wrap it up with another recruiting update. And today we head to Madison, Wisconsin to look at the Wisconsin Badgers. We have a full show today, guys, so let's kick it off. So on June 15th, a picture was leaked that showed Oklahoma State head coach Mike Gundy wearing a One American News Network shirt, and it's been known to be a very, very far-right news network that even promotes conspiracy theories. And after that picture leak, it did not take long for star running back Chuba Hubbard to respond to the picture and tweet, quote, "I will not stand for this. This is completely insensitive to everything going on in society, and it is unacceptable. I will not be doing anything with Oklahoma State until things change," end quote. Then Pete Thamel of Yahoo Sports just recently dropped a report suggesting that this has run deeper than just a shirt that Gundy was wearing. According to Thamel, Gundy has shown a repeated inability to remember younger players' names and even addresses younger players just by their number that they wear on the field. And other athletic department employees have suggested that the disconnect between Gundy and the players seems to be growing. And worst of all, Gundy in this report continued practice after walk-on Anthony Diaz almost died after his heart stopped on the practice field. And even after practice, called Diaz Nate Diaz, who is a current MMA fighter, and showed no empathy in the huddle. So Hubbard and Gundy released a video where they vow to educate Gundy and improve the well-being of all athletes at Oklahoma State. So, Brandon, this is a lot of information to take in. I just threw a lot at you and a lot at our listeners. But what is your main takeaway on Hubbard and these new reports on Gundy that we might have not even heard because it came out today, I believe, from Thamel? And what does this mean for the future of Oklahoma State football?
Oh, look, man, if they weren't already on rocky soil, then good Lord, they are now. Like I've said before, and I'll continue to say it, we are a sports podcast. We will not dive into the politics of everything. I think it was very tone deaf to wear that news network shirt right now, especially when when you say the word news, it's used very loosely because, like Zach said, they promote conspiracy theories a lot. But that's beside the point. The thing I'm going to focus on here is the whole not getting to know your players thing. And if you think that's a good look, then you can just I don't know what you can do. I can hear it right now. People coming up and saying, "Oh, Brandon, my high school coach didn't know my name until my senior year. He called me by my number. What's wrong with that?" Well, you aren't on scholarship at a Division I college football program. You probably walked out to practice and your coach forgot to cut you. So that's the first spot that we're going to stop at. If you are playing Division I college football, your coach needs to develop that relationship with you, or what? Or you're going to feel useless. I mean, you need to feel part of this team. You're contributing. Not only that, you're contributing for free to this team. So the least that can happen is your coach can get to know you. I think this is an awful look for recruiting for Oklahoma State. And I really think Mike Gundy needs to change a lot. I mean, we talked about him. We've even had Oklahoma State's play-by-play director come on. We spoke with him about how great of a coach we thought Mike Gundy was, which, when it comes down to it, just coaching football, yeah, he's great. But other than that, I mean, it's starting to sound more and more like this guy's not very tasteful. He's not, I don't know. I believe that college football coaching comes down to more than just, hey, can you call the right place at the right time? I think it comes down to, hey, you have these relationships with these guys. These guys want to play for you. These guys want to win for you. And I just don't think Mike Gundy has that.
Yeah, and don't forget, Brandon, I don't know if you saw this. I think it was 2 or 3 days ago. Some players that Gundy played against while Gundy was playing college football have come out and said that Gundy repeatedly used racial slurs in games to opponents. And that's been validated by multiple players. So that's probably whatever Gundy has said at this point. I mean, that almost that almost invalidates it, right? At this point.
I mean, I think so. And I understand the notion that people change, that people's worldviews can change because they do. Do I think that you should be punished for something that happened 30 years ago at the right times? I think this is one of those sort of things. You know, you can't run around using racial slurs left and right and then go coach, a team of kids that you probably would have called those racial slurs at one point. I mean, if he truly has changed, if his mindset truly has changed, then better. That's good on him, and that's fantastic. And I don't think you can fault the guy, but you have to think with everything that he's shown, at least through the past, or at least things have been exposed through the past month or so for Mike Gundy, that there's obviously still like a seed, if nothing else. There's got to be like a little bit of deep rooted some sort of seed there that is not good, and kind of reflects on what a lot of people would lead you to believe is strictly his past.
Yeah, and listen, guys, I want to start by saying, like Brandon said, not a political podcast, but I just want to say I'm really happy to see college football players using their voice and power that they actually do have to speak out against things like this in their own program and other communities across the country. And I hope we have more athletes. We have one next segment that did follow Hubbard's lead, who are inspired to use their voices to promote changes that are needed in our country. And I think Brandon echoes that 100%. And, if we keep this surface level, which is the shirt issue, then I do think what Hubbard said and what Gundy said is true, where Gundy just needed to be educated at the very minimum. But I think the new report, once you dug deeper, I'm not sure if education is the only solution here, Brandon. And based on this new information, for me at least, it seems like as if the chemistry and togetherness of this Cowboys team, who have really high expectations, are going to be very, very low in terms of chemistry. And I mean, we even had John Morris, Baylor's play-by-play, even speak about Oklahoma State has real goals this year, guys. They're going to be very, very good. But I see this going one of two ways. And first is the team just rallies together. They actually are brought closer because they're in this fight together, and they gel really, really well throughout the year. But then the second thing is, I mean, Brandon, I know we've talked about maybe this happened at Mississippi State with Mike Leach, but what happens if the team reacts to the coaching staff poorly and this team just falls apart? I mean, that has to lead to Gundy's dismissal, right?
It has to. I mean, if there's, I don't know. I'm personally on the train of don't fire him right now. Like, yeah, I don't think what he's done is great. I don't think the things that are coming out about him are good at all. But I spoke on it just a few moments ago about how the argument could be made that he has changed, that things have changed. But if there's evidence, to the contrary of that, then yeah, I mean, for sure. Right? I mean, he's got to go.
And I was going to address this a little bit later, but I think it fits in now. If Chuba Hubbard leaves Oklahoma State, he's got to be gone, right? For me, if Chuba Hubbard leaves Oklahoma State because of this, I think Gundy has to be let go immediately. I mean, this is the best Oklahoma State player since maybe Barry Sanders that is at Oklahoma State. And he's going to leave because your coach is not educated and he's insensitive and he's not running a great program, and you lose the best player you've had since probably one of the best college players of all time leave.
Yeah, and I definitely think that. I mean, who else would it fall on if not Mike Gundy in that scenario? So yeah, I mean, if nothing else, I think if he leaves, there definitely needs to be some disciplinary action toward Mike Gundy. Even if that's, hey, you need to take these classes on how to or to be more sensitive to the subject, or hey, I don't know, something. Dismissal seems like a lot, and I'm not saying that it's uncalled for. It just, to be more realistic, I guess I would say maybe some kind of disciplinary action might need to be taken.
Oh yeah, no, and that's just purely speculative because as of right now, Hubbard has said he is going to return, and that he even apologized for his tweet, which I don't think he should have had to apologize for his tweet personally, but I get it. But for me, this story raises major concerns in terms of Gundy's leadership and the quality of program he's running. I mean, look, Brady, you already kind of mentioned it. How in the world does this have a positive effect on recruiting? I mean,
it doesn't. There's no chance.
How do you go into a kid's living room and look his parents in the eye who possibly are minorities from the African American community, and you have all this on your back where you may have been using racial slurs in games when you were in college. You're wearing this shirt that promotes insensitive ideas about minorities. I mean, I don't understand how you can go look a parent in the face on the couch and say that your program is the best program in the country for them to attend, because I think it would be a bold-faced lie to say that.
Right. And the reason, and I want to address this real quick, the reason I'm not speaking too much about the shirt that he wore is because I'm not very educated on that. Like, I don't understand, and like, I'm just taking Zach's word for like purely right now. Like, I don't understand what this news network is. I don't know what they believe, what they put out there. And so I'm not going to speak on that. I'm purely going to speak on, hey, there's these things that Mike Gundy said back then. Hey, Mike Gundy doesn't get to know his players. Hey, Mike Gundy may have been insensitive. And I just wanted to put that out in the open.
Yeah, and like, what's a big thing in recruiting, Brandon? It's, hey, your kid's coming to join our family up here. Like your kid and you are going to be part of our family. How are you going to tell a kid's family that when they're going to be like, what, is he going to be number 12 to you? Or is he going to be his name?
Exactly. You're right. You're absolutely right. And that's what I'm saying. I said at the very beginning of this segment, there are going to be the people who send us messages that say, hey, my middle school coach called me number 12 until I left and he finally knew my name. No, that's because you were the third string quarterback on your middle school team. You're not a college athlete. You were not recruited to go play for this college for free.
Exactly. And I'm on your side about that one. And the second thing this brings me to that makes me have a concern is, Brandon, how much talent has Oklahoma State had in Gundy's tenure? I mean, we've talked Justin Blackman made our all-decade team. We have Chuba Hubbard here. Oklahoma State was my wide receiver U. So they've had so much talent, and this kind of brings into question how good is this program really running under Gundy? And if you had a coach that had a better handle on himself and the program where it was a true family, how much more successful could Oklahoma State be? I know you don't like to speculate too much, but for me at least, it brings doubts into my head whether Gundy is executing well enough to take advantage of the talent he has. I mean, he has been to Fiesta Bowls. He has competed for the Big 12, but has this kind of stuff where players might not be all the way bought in prevented them from reaching the peaks that they could have?
Right, absolutely. And it probably will, right? And it probably has.
I think it has. I really do think it has. I mean, I believe it was the 2011 team who almost made the national title. I think that team could have been the best team in the country. And who can say otherwise? I don't know. But, before we just drag, Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State through the mud, I just want to end this segment with the idea again, guys. I mean, Brandon, I don't know how many times we've said this on the podcast. I mean, these past few months between Mike Leach, Dabo Sweeney, and Mike Gundy, I think this should be an eye-opening series of events for other college football coaches out there and other just sports coaches across the country, just to educate yourself and realize that your decisions and the little things that you do affect these, student athletes more than you can imagine. And their voice carries across this country. And I think it really should. I hope we get to a better place out of this, but I just want to end it on a more positive note than that. But we're going to move on to another situation. And this one, it goes down to Mississippi, and earlier this week, reports of Mississippi creating a second flag, not taking away their original flag, but making a second flag due to the backlash recently about the current flag containing the Confederate flag within its design has just been a real issue down south. And current Mississippi State running back Kylin Hill finally decided to speak out, and he tweeted, quote, "Either change the flag or I won't be representing this state anymore. And I mean that. I'm tired." And after some Twitter backlash, Hill then tweeted, "Unlike the rest, I was born in this state, and I know what that flag means." But Hill had the support of the SEC and NCAA. They echoed his sentiment by announcing that all championship events will be banned from states that use this symbol, which added even more pressure to the state of Mississippi. So, Brandon, what is your opinion on this issue? I mean, you are like me. We're both from Alabama, Mississippi area. So, what's your opinion on this? And how could things get any worse from Mississippi State after what happened earlier this year with Mike Leach?
Yeah, man, you said it. No, I'm not really from Mississippi. I was born in Mississippi, and I went to school in Mississippi, and I've lived my life. Right now, I live as far as I've ever lived from Mississippi, and I live an hour away from Mississippi at the closest point. So I've grown up around this. I've seen this flag. I've seen everything to do with it, and I've seen the way it's affected people. I've seen both sides of the argument, and per usual, I'm not going to speak on the political aspect of this. But when it comes down to it, I like you said during the last segment, it's always good to see these players using the platform that they have for betterment or for change. And I think that's what Kylin Hill is doing here. I mean, Zach, who's the best player on Mississippi State's team this year?
It's Kylin Hill, and it's not even close.
It's not close. Who's the best player on Mississippi State's team in the past 5 years?
If it's not Dak Prescott, it's Kylin Hill.
Exactly. And Dak in college, he's done a lot better in the NFL than he did in college. So I'm firmly on Kylin Hill here. That's a statement. You know, it's sort of the same thing as Chuba Hubbard in Oklahoma State, except for I think Chuba Hubbard wanted to take a stand, wanted to use his voice, and I think he did want to change. But Kylin Hill, I think, is very serious about this, and I could definitely see him transferring if there's not a change made, or if Mississippi State doesn't disavow from this flag. I know, for instance, the University of Southern Mississippi quit flying the Mississippi State flag on their campus, I think 5 years ago. They one morning they just up and quit. Now every single weekend they have protesters in front of the campus with the Mississippi State flag. I don't know really. I mean, I guess I can see what they're protesting, but I don't really see why. They just fly 3 American flags in front of campus instead of the American flag, the Mississippi flag, and the university flag.
But Mississippi State and Ole Miss stopped flying the flag in 2016, so they also joined Southern Miss in that. So the Mississippi State flag is nowhere on Mississippi State or Ole Miss's campuses.
Well, I'm glad you had that on deck. But yeah, I mean, I think he's using this platform for change. I think in light of things that have happened at Mississippi State somewhat recently, there's a tweet from Mike Leach that we've talked about quite a few times now. I think it's time for change. I think even people that you would never expect are on the side of change here. I don't think they're wanting, hey, we need a second flag. I think they're like, okay, well, let's just get a new flag. You know, there's people everywhere. People are speaking, and I think Mississippi's on the verge of just changing their flag. And that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about how it's going to affect recruiting, how it's going to affect college football, and I think that this affects it in a very strong way. You know, I think that Kylin Hill, like I mentioned earlier, is, if he's not the best player at Mississippi State in the past decade, he's up there. And I think that it takes someone like him to do this. And I think what he's doing is going to help Mississippi State out in the long run. This helps with recruiting. This shows recruits that, hey, the players there aren't going to sit around and do nothing. They're going to be vocal. They're going to use their voice that they have. Maybe if I go there, I'll have that voice, or at the very least, I'll be around those people that I agree with. Or even if you don't agree with them, I mean, you see that they're taking a stand. They're making, they're taking charge, and they're trying to make change. And I think that's respectable. You know, no matter what side you're on, in this. I don't even know if it's a debate. Whatever. No matter what side you're on here, I think you have to respect Kylin Hill for what he's doing and how he's trying to bring change to the state that he's from and to the state that the university that he represents is in.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, another great example of a college football athlete using their power and voice. And like you said, me and Brandon can relate to this. I mean, I probably have lived easily under probably under 30 minutes from Mississippi my entire life. And I'm really glad the country is overall coming together to inspire a change like this. And like I said, Mississippi State, Ole Miss do not fly this flag. So the universities are backing Kylin Hill here. And I think the pressure is building because, I mean, Brandon, I saw a few tweets that was like, why does this put pressure on the state? The SEC championship is held in Atlanta for football. I believe it's held in Hoover, right, for baseball?
Yeah, for baseball.
Yeah,
and I think basketball is.
Yeah, basketball's in Nashville, but the key is that I believe softball rotates. Yeah. So the SEC softball tournament rotates to different universities, and people also forget the NCAA also said this. So, Brandon, I know you can kind of speak on this, being a bigger college baseball guy. Mississippi State's really, really good at baseball. So how many regionals and super regionals could this state lose if they choose to hold out here?
Has the NCAA backed the SEC here?
Yes, the NCAA has also said that they're going to keep like conference championships and like big events from states that associate themselves with like the Confederate flag or stuff like that.
Well, and it's not only Mississippi State here. I mean, Mississippi State obviously a powerhouse in baseball, but in Southern Miss is no joke. They went to the College World Series 10 years ago. They're serious. I mean, they host regionals almost every single year. They've hosted super regionals in the past. So, I mean, you're taking away from. I mean, and Ole Miss isn't awful. They'll hold regionals occasionally, and so you've got potentially 3 NCAA regional spots that are just going to be lost. I mean, you're punishing your own schools, your own state-funded public universities, because I don't know, man. I don't want to get too far into this, but you get the point. You get the point.
I mean, for a super regional, guys, in case you guys don't know about baseball, I mean, it's not just Mississippi State versus a team. It's a group of teams that come into Mississippi State and share that stadium together. It's usually, I think super regionals are 4 teams? 4. Yeah. So Mississippi State. I'm
sorry. Super regionals are, I believe it's just 2.
Yeah, and regionals are 4. So you're talking about if Mississippi State loses a regional, you have tourists from 3 other states that you're losing money from, and that's millions of dollars in just a weekend of baseball. And for football, we don't know what's coming down the line, but I mean, I'm assuming Atlanta's not going to host the SEC championship forever. I mean, stuff changes all the time, and you never know what stuff's going to go to. And in softball, there's some big money in SEC softball too, guys. So I think, the biggest thing for me is the players that are going to change their mind on coming to these universities. I mean, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, listen, guys, yes, they're not Ohio State. They're not Alabama. They're not Clemson, LSU, et cetera, et cetera. They're not winning national titles. But Mississippi State and Ole Miss have been ranked number 1 within, the last 5 years.
Yeah.
People forget Mississippi State was the very first team to be ranked number 1 in the college football playoff poll. The very first is third. Was third in that poll. So, guys, these are big time programs, and they recruit nationally. And same thing as I've talked about with Mike Gundy, and we've already highlighted it kind of with Mike Leach. Is how do you convince kids to come play for your program? You can't look those parents in the eye and say that, hey, what Mississippi is. And I think, free publicity, I guess, I was kind of reading up on the story, and I think Stephen A. Smith said it best. I think the perception of Mississippi is suffering a lot, because I mean, that just, if you talk to anyone across the country and you say Mississippi, there's some people that'll look at you crazy. I'm sure Brandon can vouch for that, as we've all traveled with other places. But I want to talk about Kylin Hill here. I mean, Brandon is being very nice. For me, last year, I think Kylin Hill was the top 2 SEC running back. He was that good, guys. He led the SEC in rushing until like week 8 or 9. That would be a giant loss to Mississippi State as a program and just the state of Mississippi in general. I mean, and then you add that to the series of transfers after Leach's controversial, insensitive tweet. I mean, Mississippi State is suffering here, guys. And, it's not just because of Leach being insensitive. Now the state government is being shown to be insensitive and unwilling and uneducated about this change. And so I think this is doing horrible things to Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Southern Miss. I mean, all these programs are really suffering at the hands of a government who just doesn't seem to be making the right thing. But I want to give you guys an update. Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin today, we're recording on Thursday, both went and met with legislators in the state of Mississippi to attempt to change the flag. And Leach has went on to say that a flag should unify its people, and this one does not. So change to this flag is needed. And I'm really glad to see Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin taking a role on the front line to aid in getting this issue fixed. And I think it does really speak volumes that, Lane Kiffin wasn't even involved in anything. Like Mike Leach was kind of like, you were already in trouble. Like you need to speak up. But I mean, I'm really happy to see, at least Lane Kiffin making a stand on this as well.
Right. And I don't want to move back to the Mike Leach thing. I mean, we spoke about it before, but I don't think that he's a weird guy. I'll leave it at that. He's a really weird guy, really weird humor. And I don't think that was like racially charged. I don't, but that's a different story. We've already spoken on it. So let's just move on.
Yeah. So guys, next segment, we're back into like full-time college football here on this one. And it is going to be our segment where we re-rank past recruiting classes. So last full episode, we took a little break, gave you guys some interviews. Hope you guys like those. We began a segment where Brandon and I re-ranked recruiting classes starting in 2013. We only are reanalyzing the top 100 because it takes a while to do that. We couldn't go through 1,000 247 composite recruits, and we re-picked the top 5 players from each class based on only their college years. I had to specify that because Brandon did not get the memo last episode. But we're going to I've got to call you out, man. We're starting with today. We are going with the loaded 2014 class. This class was headlined by Leonard Fournette, who went on to LSU, and Myles Garrett, who went on to Texas A&M. And to say they each lived up to the hype throughout their college careers probably is an understatement. So, Brandon, as I said, we're going to snake this, and we're going to go in reverse order. So, who is your number 5 recruit in this re-rank?
Oh, this one was so tough, Zach. And I know we spoke about how hard it was. We didn't actually talk about who we picked beforehand, but we talked about how hard this list was to rank because, I mean, it's just that loaded. And I agree with what you just said 100% about how Myles Garrett and Leonard Fournette really lived up to the hype. And that's kind of why it pains me to do this. So with my number 5 pick, this class was so loaded, guys. My number 5 pick, I'm going to have to go with Leonard Fournette in this class. He was number 2. In this recruiting cycle in 2014. And yeah, he lived up to the hype. He was injured his junior season pretty badly. And so that season, he only rushed for 843 yards in 7 games, which is very good for 7 games, by the way. But other than that, I mean, he came out his freshman year, I mean, just kicking, right? I mean, he played 13 games that season, 187 touches for just over 1,000 yards rushing. He averaged 5.5 yards on the ground every single touch, 10 touchdowns. He had a few receptions. He's not really a receiving back. I think he's kind of moved forward to being more of a receiving back in the NFL now. But we're not here to talk about the NFL. Zach's made that abundantly clear. But yeah, I mean, he ended up, overall with 194 touches in his freshman year. But where he really stood out was the sophomore season at LSU, where he had 300 touches on the ground with nearly 2,000 yards rushing. He had 1,953 yards. He averaged 6.5 yards. That means over 300 carries. He averaged over 6 yards every single time he touched the ball. 22 rushing touchdowns. He had nearly 20 receptions this year with almost 300 yards receiving and a touchdown even. And then on to his junior year where he was injured, where he, like I already mentioned those stats. I think overall, incredible span playing for LSU. I forgot that he returned punts and kicks his freshman year, which he did. They obviously didn't want him doing that very often, but when he was returning kicks, he had 24 returns and he averaged 26 yards a return. He even had a return for a touchdown on one of those. So that was actually a kick. He returned kicks, not punts. Anyway, incredible tenure for Leonard Fournette at LSU, but somehow he lands at number 5 on my list.
Brandon, I don't know how you even had him on your list. He was 8th when I re-ranked like the 10 players who I was considering for the top 5. He was not on my list, and the shocking part is I have 2 running backs in my top 5. So I know you're gonna be a little upset about that. But my number 5 player is kind of same as Brandon, Myles Garrett at Texas A&M. He was the top 2 player in this class originally, but he still lands in the top 5. But there's just 4 players that just had overall better careers than Garrett. But at the same time, Garrett was one of the most dominant D linemen in SEC history. I mean, he ranks top 10 in SEC history for tackles for loss, sacks, and fumbles forced. So I think those are pretty good stats for a guy who only played 3 years. I mean, he was a consensus All-American, but he was a consensus All-American in his worst statistical year, which I feel like they gave him that consensus All-American because he didn't make it early in his career. I mean, double-digit sacks in 2014 and 15, and he had 12 tackles for loss or more every single season at A&M. And you know, he was one of the best defensive ends in like you said, in SEC history, and was the number 1 pick in the NFL. I mean, I think he deserved a high ranking in this class, and I don't blame the scouts for having him. I mean, I looked at some composites. Some had him 1, Fournette 2. Some had Fournette 1, him 2. So it went back and forth. But I think, you know, looking at some of these other players' overall bodies of work made him drop to number 5. And one of these players, Brandon probably can speak on him. I don't think Brandon had him on his list, but I want Brandon to speak on this player because this is Brandon's team, and that's Jamal Adams out of LSU.
He's an honorable mention on my list. Honorable mention.
He's number 4 for me. He was number 32 overall originally. And Brandon, I'll let you before I go, I want you to kind of speak on this guy because I know you probably watched a lot more of Jamal Adams than even I did.
Yes, love Jamal Adams, obviously. I hope he gets that trade he wants because who wants to be stuck in New York? But no, I mean, Jamal Adams was just an unreal player on the field. I just feel like Leonard Fournette had a little bit more firepower to him. Zach, you could speak to how much firepower Leonard Fournette had, right?
You know, Leonard Fournette gave me my first Baton Rouge experience. I remember I was sitting like 5 rows from the lights in Death Valley. It was like a 2:30 game. It was like 9 million degrees. And Leonard Fournette assaulted a guy and murdered him on the field, and no one did anything about it. So I'm still looking for justice there.
So anyway, back to Jamal Adams. Like I said, he's an honorable mention for me. He was actually number 6 on my list. So, I mean, just to speak on him, there was something different about him because what I remember from watching him at LSU the big thing I remember about watching him is that I just didn't understand how he had so many tackles for loss. It seemed like every season as a safety, that just didn't seem possible, but he just did. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head for tackles for loss. 18. See, that's nuts. A safety should not be allowed to have 18 tackles for loss.
And he also had 2 sacks.
Yeah, how do you have sacks as a safety? That's beside the point. I mean, I remember his sophomore season being a big year for interceptions. I think it was 4 or 5 that year. Anyway,
yeah, it was.
You know, I just remember him being just like the overall package at a safety, and he's when you think about LSU as DBU. I mean, there's obviously other people you think of, but Jamal Adams is one of those big. Like if I had to do like a Mount Rushmore, like my top 4 LSU DBs, he's on it for sure.
Yeah, guys. And, you know, we're 3 players in between the both of us, and it's another SEC player here. So we might have a small bias, but I only have one other SEC player on my list after this. So, like Brandon said, Adams, one of the most dominant DBs in SEC history. I mean, throughout 3 years, over 200 tackles as a safety. And, you know, DB stats are real hard to analyze, especially at safety. But at LSU, Adams stood out to me, and and it showed with him being a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And over his last 2 seasons, had 5 interceptions, 10 pass deflections, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. He was a playmaker, and for me, he was the perfect safety at LSU because he really just shut down a side of a field. It's kind of the problem I ran into a few episodes ago talking about Jalen Ramsey because, I mean, he really didn't have a lot of stats to talk about, but if you watch the film, people avoided throwing to his side of the field, and that was Jamal Adams for you while he was at LSU.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, fantastic DB. To move forward, though, this one's going to be a little bit boring because Zach already had him on his list. I've got Myles Garrett. So 4 and 5 on my list were the number 1 and 2 in the 247 rankings for 2014. But I'll go ahead and move on. Zach's already said the stats. I mean, he was an unreal player, and he went first overall. So he did something right. To move forward, I actually have another running back, and I do not have any more SEC players on my list. The rest of my list, no SEC. They're actually in 3 different conferences. But number 3 on my list, I've got another running back, Christian McCaffrey. Just an outstanding player. In my opinion, the best running back in this class. And I think he's even better in the NFL, but Zach won't let me talk about the NFL for some reason. Guys, we're going to have an NFL podcast one day, I promise, but not today. But to talk about Christian McCaffrey, I mentioned how Leonard Fournette might have been transformed into more of a receiving back once he got to the NFL. Christian McCaffrey is obviously the epitome of a receiving back today, but he was even that in college. I mean, good God, over his career at Stanford, he had 99 receptions over 3 seasons. And that includes 45 his sophomore year alone. You know, he had 45 receptions his sophomore year for 645 yards. And if you don't want to do the math, that's 14.3 yards per reception, 5 receiving touchdowns. And that's not even to talk about his rushing stats his sophomore season. His sophomore season, this man had 337 touches for 2,019 yards. He averaged 6 yards per carry over 337 carries. I mean, that's absolutely insane. He somehow had nearly the same. I'm not going to say the same stats. His senior season, he kind of fell off a little bit, and that's hard to say that he fell off because he still had 1,600 yards rushing and 310 yards in the air. I mean, this guy almost had 2,000 total yards from scrimmage, and I say that he fell off. That's just because his sophomore season he had 2,700 yards from scrimmage. This guy was absolutely crazy to watch in college, and I think there's an argument out there to say that he's even more exciting to watch today.
So I'm going to do an opposite approach. I'm going to just skip ahead to my number 2 player because it was Christian McCaffrey. I mean, for me, I think he was the lowest ranked player to make my re-rank. He was ranked 91st overall and that's a steal, Brandon. I mean, 91st overall, you get Christian McCaffrey. I'll take it every single day. I mean, 2015 AP Player of the Year, consensus All-American, Johnny Rodgers Award winner, Pac-12 Player of the Year. I mean, he was top 10 in the country in rushing yards and led the Pac-12 twice in rushing yards and led the NCAA in scrimmage yards in 2015 as well and led the Pac-12. I mean, dominant on special teams as well. I mean, that's why. So I have another running back at 3, but this is why I jumped to McCaffrey at 2 is because he was better on special teams. I mean, he was 3rd in the country in kick return yards and 1st in the Pac-12. And he's 7th all time in history for kick return averages and top 10 all 3 years in punt returns in the Pac-12. For me, Brandon, McCaffrey is the most versatile player in the NCAA during his time at Stanford. And you mentioned his last season. He had an injury that slowed him down. But if he didn't have that injury, his stats would be even more outrageous. And that's even shown in his second place finish in the Heisman voting in 2015. I mean, McCaffrey had it all, guys. And that's why he's my number 2 player in my re-rank. But to skip back to 3, I have Nick Chubb, Brandon. I have the Georgia running back, Nick Chubb, 33rd ranked overall player. Listen, I know Fournette was number 1 in this class, but I looked at overall career over just that one explosive year Fournette had. And, I mean, Chubb ran for over 4,700 yards in his career and had 44 rushing touchdowns, a 6.3 yards per carry, throughout his career, and he ranks second, Brandon, in SEC history in rushing yards, seventh in rushing touchdowns in SEC history, and he's top 20 in the SEC in yards per attempt. I mean, for me, we talked about RBU, and this is why I picked Georgia. Chubb is arguably the most dominant and consistent SEC running back in recent history because he did it over 4 years. Other running backs like Fournette, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, they only had really 1 or 2 years where they dominated. Chubb dominated almost all 4 years, except for his sophomore year where he got hurt. But his freshman, junior, and senior year put up over 1,000 yards and was the most consistent back. And for me, that's why he's over Fournette. And I think he ranks third here, but McCaffrey edges him out for my number 2 spot because of special teams.
Yeah, I get that. And speaking, I don't want to say speaking of special teams, but my next player, Zach, let me ask you this before I get started. When you think of someone who's going into the recruiting cycle listed as an athlete, what do you think of? You think of, oh, that guy's probably plays wide receiver and cornerback, and he's probably going to end up being a cornerback because he can't catch. That's what I think of.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so you think of a guy that could play either position, but he's probably going to play one. Well, I'm going to talk about a guy who played every position in college, and that's Jabril Peppers. And he's my number 2 player just because he was, I don't want to even say like dominant. He was very good at every position that he played. He played he was listed as 3 different positions over his 3 seasons at Michigan. He played defensive back, safety, and linebackers. He was a cornerback, a safety, and a linebacker over his tenure there. Not only this, he was a kick returner. He also, he played offense. That's nuts. It's nuts that you can play offense. I don't know. He played every single position, and this wasn't even like based off of stats for me. This is based off of what I remember from the people who played in the class of 2014. Just remembering Jabril Peppers' play was crazy. Old guys loved him because they reminded him of just old smash mouth football, where you played both sides of the field, which he did. I mean, not like consistently he didn't, but he could. And he was incredible when it came to punt returning, kick returning, whatever you want to talk about. In 2016, he led the Big Ten in punt return yards with 310. He came, he was third in the NCAA that year. And he didn't even have the most punt returns. He had 21 punt returns that season. That's 4th in the Big Ten alone. So I don't know where he landed in NCAA. He had 1 punt return for a touchdown that season. But like I said, I don't want to talk about all of his stats. I just want to talk about how dominant of a player he seemed like to me during his tenure, and that lands him at number 2 on my list.
Yeah, I had him at 6 on my list. I don't know, man. Like, I mean, he was dominant in so many different positions, but I don't think he was. I think every player in my list could make an argument that they were the best player at their position, at least in their conference. And I mean, Ohio State had a lot of good defensive players. There was some at Wisconsin. I mean, I'm not sure if Jabril Peppers made the complete cut for me, but like I respect the pick. I think Jabril Peppers is a great pick there. If we ever do an NFL career, he definitely could make it because he has not done as well in the NFL as most people projected. But I respect that pick a lot.
Yeah, Zach. And since neither one of us have named him yet, I think that number 1 was pretty. It was cut and dry for me at least.
It better be.
We're talking about Deshaun Watson here.
Yes, Deshaun Watson. Go ahead. Right. I'll let you go first. I'll come in behind you, man.
Well, I don't want to steal Zach's thunder, but as the heart guy here, I just remember Deshaun Watson devastating Alabama, and that's the main reason that he's on my list. 2016 was a great year. But no, I mean, over his entire career, just an incredible quarterback. I mean, what can you really say about this guy that hasn't been said? Even his freshman year, he only played 8 games as compared to his 15, his sophomore and junior seasons. He never had a passing percentage that was less than 67%. He went 67.9, 67.8, and 67% his senior year. He had over 4,000 yards passing 2 out of his 3 years. And one of those years, he almost touched 4,600 yards passing. That's incredible. I mean, to have over 10,000 yards passing in your career, in a 3-year career, is absolutely nuts. And this guy did it. He had 90 touchdowns over his career, including 41 passing touchdowns. And this is just passing, by the way. These are just passing stats. I mean, we can go down to rushing if you want, Zach, because over his career, he had nearly 2,000 yards rushing, and that includes 1,100 yards his sophomore season alone. 12 rushing touchdowns his sophomore season, 9 his junior season. And he had 50 combined touchdowns over his junior season alone. I mean, this guy was a star.
Yeah, a star might not. I mean, this might be a little bit controversial here. The number one player in this class by far is Deshaun Watson, and so let's hear me out. I think he probably is the most dominant quarterback in recent memory, back to Tebow, because everyone else that we consider, like Cam Newton, Joe Burrow, they only did it for 1 year, Brandon. Deshaun Watson dominated his entire career. So as a body of work, Deshaun Watson could be one of the best quarterbacks in recent memory. And he finished top 3 in the Heisman voting, and I think he easily could be. Would you say that he could easily, if you look at it right, the best player to never win a Heisman Trophy?
Oh, absolutely.
And like Brandon said, I mean, he in his career, I mean, he had over 10,000 passing yards and 90 touchdowns just passing. Brandon, I want to list the ranking here. He's first in ACC history in completion percentage, 4th in passing yards, 3rd in passing touchdowns, 4th in passer efficiency, and 3rd in touchdowns responsible for of all time in ACC history. I mean, how many good players have been in the ACC, especially at quarterback?
Too many to name.
And not even that. I mean, he's one of the most decorated players of all time outside of the Heisman. I mean, he's a 2-time Manning Award winner, 2-time Davey O'Brien Award winner, a Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award winner, ACC Offensive Player of the Year, ACC Player of the Year. I mean, for me, guys, Deshaun Watson is by far the best player in this class, and this class was much more loaded than 2013, and Deshaun Watson probably could win the top spot in just about any of the classes that we have even yet to analyze, because Deshaun Watson is probably one of the more underrated and underappreciated players of probably my recent memory. And I think once this ages a little bit, people will look back and really appreciate how good Deshaun Watson really was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And guys, and I know Zach and I talked about it, but this class was so loaded. And I know I'm kind of catching you off guard here, Zach, but how many players did we not list that would have been on this list if it were almost any other year?
I mean, how about Quentin Nelson, who was arguably the best offensive guard to play in the past decade? He made our all-decade team.
Marlon Humphrey, Rashaan Evans, Dalvin Cook. I mean, the list goes on and on. Adoree Jackson, Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, Bo Scarborough. There's too many players to name. And that's just in the top 50. Marshawn Lattimore. I mean, that's just the top 50.
Yeah, I mean, this class was just outrageous. I mean, you can go down NFL rosters, and they're probably in this 2014 recruiting class, guys. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Sony Michel.
Yeah. Sony Michel is another one. I had a real issue not putting him in there. I mean, there's just so many. And Marlon Humphrey shut down corner, like you said. I mean, there's just so many people. And Quentin Nelson probably has an argument to be the best player in this class. But as we all know, offensive linemen get no respect here, apparently. But Quentin Nelson's arguably the best interior offensive lineman in years, guys. And I think that's shown now, even in the NFL.
Absolutely.
But, guys, we're going to move on. Last segment of the day. It's your favorite. We're back with a recruiting update. And check out all our recent episodes, except for the interviews, to catch up on all our recent updates. And today we head up to Madison, Wisconsin to analyze the Wisconsin Badgers 2021 class. They're trying to follow up right outside top 25 class from last season, and Paul Chryst is looking to find some more elite players to build on a Big Ten championship run from last season. This class is headlined with 7 top 500 recruits, and there's still plenty of spots open in this recruiting class, so the work is not done for Chryst and his staff. Brandon, what's your take on this class, and do you see Wisconsin taking that next step to be a national contender for years to come?
Man, I hope so. Everyone knows how much I love Wisconsin just for no reason. Like, I have no ties to Wisconsin. I I think I like them because their running backs are usually pretty good, and I love a good running back. Everyone knows that. But yeah, man, I mean, this class, it looks solid, right? From the outside looking in, at least. I mean, their class is headlined by two 6'7" tackles, in JP Benchwell and Riley Mallman. I mean, they're absolute monsters. I mean, 6'7", 260, 270 respectively. And they've been committed for, I mean, for a while now. I mean, one's been committed for over a year. One's been committed for nearly a year. And they've really spread this class out. I mean, they have those two offensive linemen committed. They have three running backs committed, which is nuts, but it's Wisconsin, so it's to be expected. They have three-star running backs committed right now. They have one quarterback, three linebackers, two defensive backs, and they've spread the recruits out not only by position, but by location. I didn't realize that Wisconsin recruited all over the country like it looks like they are right now. They've obviously had a lot of success recruiting nationwide, which is good to see for the Badgers. And to be completely honest with you, I mean, right now they only have 15 commits, and they're ranked number 12 in the country. I see it going up from here. I mean, they're third in the Big Ten right now. Last year they finished fifth. They finished 26th in the nation last year. I see them finishing higher than that, and I think they are taking the right steps. Do I think that they're taking, all steps necessary to be that national contender that they keep fighting to be? I'm not positive about that. I think you're going to have to give Graham Mertz the reins first before we even have any talks about that. But I like what I'm seeing out of this Wisconsin recruiting class. I mean, they're building up the offensive line like they normally do. They've got the running backs locked down, and they've got a good quarterback in waiting. And they have another one, that was recruited, a pro-style quarterback out of Santa Barbara, California, and Deacon Hill. They've got another one in waiting, obviously. So I'm excited to see what we're going to see out of the Badgers this season.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, guys, domination in the Midwest is what drives this class. I mean, Brandon kind of talked about it. I mean, they have the number one player in Wisconsin and Minnesota, and it shows the dominance here because Minnesota's on the upswing. So you figure, Minnesota would have a good chance with these top recruits, and they have every single top 5 player out of Wisconsin committed, Brandon, already.
Yeah.
And they have the number 2 player in Iowa already committed. And, they, like you said, they've been recruiting across the country. They have recruits out of Florida, Tennessee, one out of California. I'm really, really impressed with what Paul Chryst and his staff are doing on the trail right now. I mean, to build relationships across the country in a time where that may be difficult without face-to-face interaction, I think it speaks volumes about what the staff and this program has become. I mean, I think Wisconsin has really been at the forefront of national, I guess, competitiveness for a long time now. And, like you said, the top two recruits in this class are going to continue a long line of offensive line dominance. I mean, you spoke, they're both 6'7", and they're both 260 to 270 pounds. I mean, that's outrageous in my opinion. I mean, they're both top 150 recruits as well. And now I want to talk about each of them separately. So we're talking about JP first. I think he's perfect to be an anchor on the left side of the offensive line. I think, his basketball background is what really interests me because, I mean, a big guy like this that can move and has the athleticism to really be good at basketball is going to, I think, work wonders for a big kid like him. I mean, for offensive tackle to be able to move and bend and pick up blitzes, these fast physical edge rushers, the finesse moves that they're equipped with now, I think having a background of another sport like basketball, baseball, soccer, something like that is huge. And I'm looking for this kid to play on Sundays, and I think he should be able to be the next great tackle at Wisconsin. And then we go to Riley Mallman, and I think he's the perfect counterpart to JP on the other side. I mean, he also plays basketball, Brandon. So you got two hyper athletic tackles to anchor the ends of your offensive line, and I think these two guys should give Wisconsin one of the best future offensive tackle duos in the country. And for me, Malman is going to be another immediate contributor. And I think both of these guys can play on Sunday. I don't know about you, Brandon, but I watched some of their film, and I think if they get developed right and they put a little bit more muscle on and they get some experience in the system, I think they're going to be bulldozers, and I think they are going to easily you're easily going to be able to hear their names on Sunday very, very soon.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it just lives up to that history at Wisconsin. Zach, I know this may be premature, but I know that you normally like to talk about maybe a lesser known player that might stick out. So why don't we go ahead and move on there?
Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead. You want me to go first? Or you want to go first?
Yeah. I'll take first. I always put you on the spot, so I'll go ahead and let you relax for a little bit.
That means Zach has someone he really likes, and he doesn't want me to talk about him.
I do. I really, really like this kid, and I want to start with Jake Chaney. He is ranked 839th overall, 37th inside linebacker out of Lehigh Acres, Florida. He had offers from Michigan, Pitt, Cincinnati, Miami, and it shows that, he may be under the radar, but he was starting to garner some attention from these other teams, and Wisconsin locked him up quick. He has size and athleticism to be a real problem at the middle linebacker spot, guys. He's 6'2", 210 right now, and he has room to put weight on that frame, and he probably can even grow because he's only a junior in high school. And, I watched I think his film was like 6 minutes, and I watched it, and I have some takeaways from the film. And Brandon, if you aren't doing anything later tonight, watch this kid's film, because this kid really blew me away for being below 800th overall. And first is the patience that Chaney possesses to let the play develop and let the holes open, and he reads plays so well. And I think his patience is outstanding. And I think it's a skill that a lot of incoming linebackers have to learn, and it slows their development to really step into a defense. But that's the first thing I noticed about Chaney is how he strays perfectly, and he reads the offense great. And I think he's going to be a real problem with that patience. And secondly, added onto that patience is his physicality. Every single play, Brandon, he hit somebody. And it wasn't just like a tap, man. He ran through people, and he finds a perfect way of balancing patience, skill, and then just the physicality that you look for in a linebacker. I mean, multiple plays on the tape. I think it was even second play. He runs through blockers, or if he doesn't run through a blocker, he runs through the tackle, and it's just amazing to watch. And speaking about tackling, I love his efficiency in tackling. On the film, of course, there's no missed tackles on the film, but his form and ability to tackle and read plays is really going to project him as a 100 to 150 tackle guy a year. I mean, Brandon, in last season as a junior, he had 100 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and a fumble recovery. I mean, this kid was all over the field, and as a junior to get 100 tackles is outstanding, because you still expect the junior to be developing. And the only thing that I would like to see more is better pass coverage. Maybe some INTs, maybe some pass deflections, better just ability to be out in the open field and pass coverage. But I think this kid is a hard-nosed run stopper, downhill player, and he's going to be a plug in the middle of this Wisconsin defense. And I don't know if you guys watched a lot of Wisconsin football, go watch back some of their games. The defense is hard-nosed, disciplined, and they know their assignments, and that is what Chaney is. And he is perfect fit for this hard-nosed nature of this James Leonard defense in Madison.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you almost made me more mad than I could possibly fathom when you said Jack at first, because I thought that you were going to say Jake, but you just said Jack. So I'm going to talk about Jack Pugh real quick. Jack Pugh is a tight end who has been committed, who just recently committed to Wisconsin, actually, less than a month ago. Or actually, I'm sorry, exactly a month ago. On May 25th, surprise, guys, we recorded a day early. He's a 4-star tight end, so yeah, not really a sleeper, but I'm going to go ahead and call him a sleeper because his other offers were to Akron, Boston College, Bowling Green, Cincinnati. He only had a few other offers from Division I schools, and those were Indiana, Duke, Iowa State. I mean, we're not talking about big football programs here. I'd say, obviously, he had 3 other fairly big name schools offer him. I'm not sure if they offered him a scholarship or not, and that might be why he's at Wisconsin. But he was offered by Michigan, Minnesota, and Penn State as well. but moving forward with this kid, I mean, what I like about him so much is that he's not even listed as an athlete here. He's listed as a tight end, but I have a feeling that when he gets to Wisconsin, he's going to end up on the defensive side of the ball, and he's going to be a defensive end. This is a big kid. I mean, he's 6'5", 235 pounds, huge. I'd like to see him get a little bit faster if he is going to play tight end or defensive end, but especially tight end. I'd like to see him get a little bit faster because through watching his tape in high school, it doesn't really seem like he's a big blocking tight end. It looks like he's going out on routes a lot more, which I mean, I can speak to that a little bit. He's very physical. You know, given the size that he is as a junior in high school, he's 6'5", 235. I'd just say give him until he gets to Wisconsin. This kid's going to end up, I mean, I could see him even being 245, 250 by the time he gets there. Who knows what the kid's done growing? I mean, he's 6'5", but I mean, for all we know, he could end up being 6'6", 6'7" by the time he's playing for the Badgers. Very physical, going out on routes. I know he lined up a wide receiver a good bit. But I liked overall what I saw from this kid. I mean, he's ranked 329th in the country. He's the 14th tight end in the country. He may have been overlooked by a few programs, and I think that Wisconsin really got a diamond in the rough here with this player.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking through their class overall, I just find kids that fit the system. They're not going after these 5 stars that, you know, that most people are. They're just going after kids that might be a little bit under the radar, that fit their system, that are talented, and that's what's made Wisconsin successful. I mean, you know, these maybe not as highly talented kids that have a lot of potential, and then Wisconsin has done an excellent job of developing players. So I think overall this class can be summed up in one word, and it's just Wisconsin. Like it's a perfect fit, and all the kids are disciplined, hard-nosed, fast, physical, and are going to make plays on Saturday, and I can't wait to see them suit up, guys. But right now, that is the end of this episode. We're back officially now, so same schedule as usual, guys, posting episodes. We had to take a little bit of a break there, but we got some good interviews in. Let us know what y'all think of those. But social media, guys, Instagram @_Bluebloods, Twitter @_Bluebloods. You know, Brandon, we got to get back on that. We kind of slacked up for them, and you know, haven't really fought for our namesake on there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We gotta take this calculus account down. We're not dealing with nerds anymore. We're not gonna let that pass us by.
But guys, Facebook is @the Bluebloods Pod. You know, we promised y'all something. We've been asking you guys to rate the podcast. We've been getting more and more 5-star ratings on the podcast, so we love you guys so much, all our listeners. We did say we'd read you know, comments if y'all gave them. We did get one. You know, it's just, Brandon, you'll love this. It is just labeled hot takes. That is the title of the rating. And it says, love the detail on this pod that other mainstream CFB pods won't indulge in. But man, chill with the ridiculous hot takes and mispronouncing coaches and players' names. Keep up the great work. Listen, guys, all the takes on here are real. You know, it is as what we think. That's why we started this pod, but we love you guys. Listen, if 2 kids from, you know, Mississippi and Alabama, I feel like we do all right on the names. We're going to work on that. But I don't know if y'all noticed, I did not say the name of JP, the offensive tackle, because I know I would have butchered it. You know, they need like a Rosetta Stone for like weird names, Brandon. I'm going to contact Rosetta Stone and see if we can get one of those, because I need some help here.
Okay. Let me know what they say.
But guys, website thebluebloodspod.com. You know, it's quarantine. We've been slacking. I'm gonna get you guys some articles up there. I know we've been in talk about some, so stay tuned. We'll get the website back up and rolling. We've taken a hiatus, we'll call it, from the website, but we'll get it back up and going. Find the podcast anywhere, guys. Subscribe, rate the podcast, leave a comment. We'll read it like this. We love all our listeners, bro. You guys keep subscribing and listening. We'll keep dropping episodes. But for right now, guys, we out.